The city had become a maze of concrete and glass that I no longer found inspiring. My life, once full of the promise of creativity and adventure, had dwindled into a routine of coffee shops and blank pages. I needed a break, a radical change of scenery to clear my mind and hopefully break through my persistent writer's block. So I decided to take a road trip, hoping the open road would bring new perspectives and maybe even a story worth writing. On the third day of my journey, somewhere between nowhere and nowhere else, my car decided it had enough. The engine sputtered, coughed, and then died, leaving me stranded on a desolate stretch of highway. I managed to pull over to the side and pop the hood, staring at the massive metal and wires that might as well have been a foreign language to me. As I contemplated my limited options, a sound reached me over the wind, a deep, rumbling growl. A semi-truck appeared on the horizon, growing larger as it approached. It slowed down as it neared me, eventually coming to a stop a few yards ahead. The driver, a ruggedly handsome man in his late 30s, climbed down from the cab and walked over with an easy confidence. "Need some help?" he asked, his voice warm and inviting. There was a hint of something else in his eyes, curiosity perhaps, or a shared understanding of life's unpredictability. "Yeah, that would be great. I think my car just gave up on me," I replied, trying to mask my frustration with a smile. "I'm Jake," he said, extending a hand. "Emily," I responded, shaking his hand. His grip was firm but gentle, a comforting contrast to the harshness of my situation. Jake took a quick look under the hood and confirmed my worst fears. "Looks like your alternator's shot. You're not going anywhere until it's fixed." I sighed, glancing at the empty road stretching out in both directions. "Any chance there's a mechanic nearby?" He chuckled. "Not exactly nearby, but there's a small town about 20 miles from here. I can give you a lift and we can get someone to tow your car." Grateful for the help, I gathered my essentials and locked up my car. Climbing into Jake's truck was like stepping into another world. The cab was surprisingly clean and comfortable, with photos of a teenage girl pinned to the sun visor. He caught me looking. "That's Lily, my daughter," he said, his voice softening. "She's 16 and already smarter than I'll ever be." "She's beautiful?" I said, genuinely touched by the pride in his eyes. The drive to the town was surprisingly pleasant. Jake had a way of making conversation easy, asking about my life in the city and my writing. I found myself opening up to him more than I expected, sharing my struggles and the reasons behind my spontaneous road trip. When we reached the town, Jake introduced me to Joe, the local mechanic. Joe assured me he could tow my car and have it fixed in a couple of days. In the meantime, Jake offered to show me around and help me find a place to stay. We ended up at a cozy diner, the kind that seems untouched by time. Over plates of homemade pie and coffee that was actually decent, Jake and I continued to talk. I learned about his love for the open road, the freedom it gave him, and the challenges of being a long-haul truck driver. He spoke with such passion and honesty that I couldn't help but feel drawn to him. As the evening wore on, I realized I was no longer thinking about my broken car or my writer's block. Instead, I was captivated by Jake's stories and the easy camaraderie that had sprung up between us. There was something about him, a sense of authenticity and warmth that I hadn't encountered in a long time. Before I knew it, the sun had set, casting a golden glow over the town. Jake walked me to a quaint bed and breakfast, making sure I was settled in before he left. As he turned to go, he hesitated. "Emily, I'm heading out on a new route tomorrow. If you're up for it, you're welcome to join me. It might give you the inspiration you're looking for." I looked at him, surprised by the offer. But as I considered it, I felt a spark of excitement. Maybe this unexpected detour was exactly what I needed. "I'd like that," I said, smiling. Jake nodded, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Great. I'll pick you up at 8. As I watched him walk away, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and contentment. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of excitement that I hadn't felt in years. The bed and breakfast was charming, with floral wallpaper and antique furniture that made it feel like stepping back in time. After a quick breakfast of homemade muffins and fresh coffee, I packed my things and waited outside for Jake. True to his word, he pulled up at exactly 8 o'clock. He helped me stow my bag in the cab and gave me a warm smile. Ready for an adventure? Absolutely, I replied, feeling a thrill of anticipation. We hit the road, and as the town disappeared in the rearview mirror, I found myself looking forward to the unknown. Jake had planned a route that would take us through several states, delivering goods to various destinations. For him, it was routine, but for me, it was a journey into the heart of America. The landscape changed with every passing mile. We drove through rolling hills, dense forests, and vast stretches of farmland. I kept my notebook on my lap, scribbling down notes and snippets of conversation that sparked ideas. Jake was a treasure trove of stories, and I listened eagerly as he talked about his experiences on the road, the people he'd met, and the challenges he'd faced. As the hours passed, we stopped at roadside diners and truck stops, places that were new and fascinating to me, but familiar to Jake. He seemed to know everyone, and I watched in admiration as he greeted people with genuine warmth and interest. It was clear that he had a way of making connections wherever he went. One afternoon, we encountered our first challenge. The truck started making strange noises, and Jake pulled over to check it out. As he worked on the engine, I couldn't help but admire his skill and confidence. He was in his element, and it was a side of him I found incredibly attractive. After a while, he wiped his hands on a rag and gave me a reassuring smile. "Looks like we're good to go. Just a minor issue." I breathed a sigh of relief. "You're amazing. I wouldn't have known what to do." He shrugged modestly. "It's all part of the job. You learn to handle whatever comes your way." As we continued our journey, I found myself opening up to Jake even more. I told him about my ex-boyfriend, Mark, and how our relationship had ended when I realized we wanted different things in life. Jake listened without judgment, offering insights that made me see my situation in a new light. "Sometimes it takes stepping away from everything you know to find out what you really want," he said. "That's why I love being on the road. It gives me the space to think and see things clearly." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. Being with Jake was like a breath of fresh air, and I felt my creative block starting to lift. The stories I heard and the places we visited were all fodder for my writing, and I found myself jotting down ideas almost constantly. One evening, as we drove under a sky ablaze with the colors of the setting sun, Jake asked me about my dreams and aspirations. It was a question I hadn't really considered in a long time. "I used to dream about writing a novel that would touch people's hearts," I admitted. "But somewhere along the way, I got lost in the day-to-day grind and forgot why I started writing in the first place." Jake glanced at me, his eyes soft with understanding. "Maybe this trip will help you find your way back." "I hope so," I said, feeling a renewed sense of determination. That night, we parked at a rest area and set up camp. Jake had a small grill, and we cooked dinner under the stars. The simplicity of the moment, combined with the vastness of the sky above, made me feel incredibly alive. We talked late into the night, sharing stories and dreams, and I realized that Jake was becoming more than just a companion on this journey. He was becoming someone I cared about deeply. As the days turned into a week, I felt a growing connection with Jake. But there was also a shadow hanging over us, my unresolved feelings for Mark. He had been calling and texting, trying to rekindle our relationship, and I found myself torn between the familiarity of the past and the exciting possibilities of the future. One evening, as we approached a small town where Jake had a delivery, he turned to me with a serious expression. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" He hesitated, then sighed. "I got a call from my ex-wife. Lily is having a tough time, and she needs me to come home for a while. I hate to cut our trip short, but she comes first." I felt a pang of disappointment, but I understood. "Of course, Jake. Family is important. I can find my own way from here." "No," he said firmly. "I want you to come with me. I could use your support, and maybe you can find inspiration in my hometown. It's not what we planned, but it's still an adventure." I looked at him, my heart swelling with gratitude and affection. "I'd like that." As we changed course and headed towards Jake's hometown, I couldn't help but feel that this unexpected detour might lead to something even more meaningful than I had ever imagined. Jake's hometown was a small, picturesque place nestled in the rolling hills of the Midwest. As we drove down the main street, I could see why he loved it here. The town had a charm that was both nostalgic and inviting, with its old-fashioned storefronts and tree-lined streets. It was a stark contrast to the frenetic pace of the city I was used to, and I felt a sense of calm wash over me. We pulled up to a modest house with a well-kept lawn. Jake's ex-wife, Karen, was waiting for us on the porch. She was a striking woman with an air of strength and grace. Her expression softened when she saw Jake, and I could see the remnants of a deep bond between them. "Jake?" she said, stepping forward to hug him. "Thank you for coming." "Of course, Karen," Jake replied, his voice filled with concern. "How's Lily?" Karen glanced at me, then back at Jake. "She's struggling, but she's a strong girl. She'll get through this." Jake introduced me to Karen, and I could see a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "Emily's a friend I met on the road. She's a writer, and she's traveling with me for a while." Karen smiled politely, though I sensed a hint of curiosity. "It's nice to meet you, Emily. Any friend of Jake's is welcome here." Lily arrived shortly after we did, her demeanor a mix of teenage defiance and vulnerability. She had her father's piercing blue eyes and a spark of intelligence that was immediately apparent. She greeted Jake with a mixture of affection and frustration, clearly torn by her current situation. "Hey, Dad," she said, trying to sound casual but failing to hide her relief. "Hey, kiddo," Jake replied, hugging her tightly. "How are you holding up?" Lily shrugged. "I'm fine, I guess. Just everything's a mess." Jake introduced me and Lily gave me a wary smile. "Nice to meet you," she said, though I could tell she was sizing me up. Over the next few days, I settled into a rhythm with Jake and his family. We spent time with Lily, trying to help her navigate her feelings and the changes in her life. I could see how much Jake cared for her, and it only made me admire him more. He was patient and kind, always putting her needs first. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Jake and I sat on the porch, the cool night air wrapping around us. The sky was clear, and the stars seemed to shimmer more brightly than I had ever seen. "Thanks for being here, Emily," Jake said, his voice soft. "I don't think I could have handled all this without you." "I'm glad I could help," I replied. "Lily's a great kid. She just needs time." Jake nodded, looking thoughtful. "She's been through a lot. Her mom and we tried to make it work, but my job kept me away too much. It wasn't fair to her or Lily." I placed a hand on his arm, offering silent support. He looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude and something more, something that made my heart skip a beat. As the days turned into weeks, I became a part of Jake's world. We visited places from his past, each one revealing a new facet of his life. I learned about his love for baseball, his favorite fishing spots, and the memories he cherished most. In return, I shared more of my own life, my dreams, and the struggles I faced as a writer. One afternoon, as we walked through a sun-dappled forest near his childhood home, Jake stopped and turned to me. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you." I looked at him, my heart pounding. "What is it?" He took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about how much you've come to mean to me. I know we haven't known each other for long, but I feel like we have something special." My heart swelled with emotion. "I feel the same way, Jake. You've shown me a world I never knew existed. You've helped me find myself again." He stepped closer, taking my hands in his. "Emily, I know this is all happening fast, but I can't ignore what I feel. I want to be with you. I want us to be together." Tears filled my eyes as I realized the depth of my own feelings. "Jake, I want that too, more than anything." We kissed, a tender and passionate connection that felt like the beginning of something beautiful and profound. In that moment, I knew I had found not only my muse, but also my heart's true desire. Just as we were about to head back, my phone buzzed. It was Mark. Reluctantly, I answered, and his voice, so familiar and yet so distant now, filled my ear. "Emily, I've been trying to reach you. We need to talk." I sighed, feeling the weight of my unresolved past pressing down on me. "Mark, this isn't a good time." "It's important," he insisted. "I made a mistake, Emily. I want you back. I'm in town. I need to see you." My heart sank as I realized that my journey was far from over. There were still decisions to be made and paths to choose. And I knew the next part of my story would be the hardest yet. Mark's unexpected arrival had cast a shadow over the peace I had found with Jake. As I walked back to the house, I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my chest. I needed to tell Jake about my meeting with Mark, and I wasn't sure how he would react. I found Jake on the porch, working on some minor repairs. He looked up and smiled when he saw me, but his eyes held a question. I took a deep breath and sat down beside him. "Jake, we need to talk," I began, my voice trembling slightly. "Mark showed up today." Jake's expression darkened, but he stayed silent, waiting for me to continue. "He said he wants to get back together," I said, my words tumbling out in a rush. "But I told him it's over. I told him about us." Jake's face softened, and he reached for my hand. "How do you feel about it?" "I feel relieved," I admitted. It was hard to see him, but I know I made the right decision. My life is here now with you. He squeezed my hand, his eyes filled with understanding. "Thank you for telling me. I know it couldn't have been easy." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the past lifting from my shoulders. I felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with Jake by my side. That evening, we decided to have a family dinner with Karen and Lily. It was a chance for all of us to connect and support Lily as she navigated her feelings. The atmosphere was warm and comforting, filled with laughter and shared stories. As we sat around the table, I couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging. This was more than just a temporary stop on my journey. It was becoming a home. Lily was opening up more each day, and I could see the positive impact Jake's presence was having on her. After dinner, Karen pulled me aside. "Emily, I wanted to thank you for being here. You've been a great influence on Jake and Lily." I smiled, touched by her words. "They mean a lot to me. I'm glad I could help." Karen hesitated, then added, "I can see how much Jake cares about you. I hope you know what you mean to him." Her words stayed with me as I went to bed that night. I had found love and a sense of purpose in this unexpected journey, and I was determined to nurture it. The next day, Jake and I took Lily to her favorite park. We spent the afternoon playing games, laughing, and talking about the future. It was a simple, joyful day, and I could see the happiness returning to Lily's eyes. As we walked back to the house, Jake pulled me aside. "Emily, there's something I need to ask you." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" He took a deep breath, looking deeply into my eyes. "I know our journey together started by chance, but it feels like fate. I can't imagine my life without you. Will you stay with me? Will you be a part of my family?" Tears filled my eyes as I realized the depth of his love. "Yes, Jake, I want to be with you. I want to build a life together." He smiled, pulling me into a tight embrace. "Thank you, Emily. You've made me the happiest man in the world." As we stood there holding each other, I knew that our journey was just beginning. We had faced our past and found each other in the process. Now it was time to create a future filled with love, adventure, and endless possibilities. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity and emotion. With Jake and Lily by my side, I felt more inspired and motivated than ever before. I poured my heart into my writing, capturing the essence of our journey and the love that had blossomed along the way. Jake's support was unwavering. He encouraged me every step of the way, providing feedback on my drafts and sharing his own stories to enrich my work. Our collaboration brought us even closer, deepening our bond and solidifying our partnership. Lily, too, found her own path. With Jake's guidance and my encouragement, she began exploring her interests and talents. We helped her navigate the complexities of teenage life, offering support and love as she discovered her passions. One evening, as I sat on the porch with my laptop, Jake joined me, a look of pride in his eyes. "How's the writing going?" he asked, leaning over to kiss my forehead. "It's going great," I replied, smiling up at him. "I think I'm finally capturing the story I've been wanting to tell." Jake nodded, sitting down beside me. "I have no doubt it will be amazing. You have a gift, Emily." As we sat there, watching the sun set over the hills, I felt a sense of peace and fulfillment that I had never known before. I had found not only my muse, but also my home. A few days later, we received a call from a literary agent who had read one of my sample chapters. She was impressed and wanted to discuss the possibility of representing me. It was the breakthrough I had been hoping for, and I couldn't have been more thrilled. Jake and I celebrated that night, toasting to our future and the adventures that lay ahead. We talked about our dreams and plans, envisioning a life filled with love, creativity, and endless exploration. As the months passed, our bond grew stronger. We traveled together, experiencing new places and cultures, and I drew inspiration from every journey. My book took shape, capturing the essence of our story and the love that had transformed my life. One day, as we were driving down a scenic highway, Jake pulled over to a lookout point. He took my hand and led me to the edge, where we could see the vast expanse of the landscape below. "Emily," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "this journey with you has been the most incredible experience of my life. I want to spend the rest of my days exploring the world with you, creating memories and building our future. Will you marry me?" Tears filled my eyes as I looked at the man who had changed my life in so many ways. "Yes, Jake," I whispered. "I will marry you." He slipped a ring onto my finger, and we kissed, sealing our promise to each other. As we stood there, embracing the future and the endless possibilities it held, I knew that our love was the greatest adventure of all. Together, we faced the world with open hearts and a shared dream. Our story was one of love, resilience, and the unbreakable bond that had brought us together. And as we continued our journey, I knew that we were destined for a lifetime of happiness and endless exploration.